Hello, welcome back to our latest We Are Sunderland briefing with myself, Dom Shaw and Scott Wilson, in association, as ever, with our partners, the Fans Museum in the City and Cospex Opticians. We're going to have a look back at another win for Sunderland today, that victory over Oxford United at the weekend. We'll have a chat about the open training session, which was well attended, as you'd expect. That was excellent. Good insight there at the Stadium of Light on Tuesday. And we'll look ahead to the visit, to the trip to QPR this weekend, where Sunderland will look to extend the lead at the top of the championship. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already and you're watching along. We'd appreciate that. If you're listening on your podcast platforms, then rate and review on there as well, and just get in touch if there's anything you want us to discuss, any issues you want us to get stuck into in the weeks ahead. You were at the Stadium of Light at the weekend, Scott. No issues there whatsoever. We talked last week about how would it be lovely just to get a no-fuss win in the type of game, really, that was what you'd expect. Well, they did that and some, really.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it was better than that, really. Like I thought that was the best Sunderland have played all season for large patches of that game. I mean, it was 2-0. I guess it wasn't like they created loads of chances that they missed, but that could have been 5 or 6, and Oxford genuinely couldn't have had any complaints. Sunderland were that good. It was the confidence that they're playing with at the minute that stood out for me more than anything else. You know, the little one-touch passing, little flicks round the corner from Rigg, from Isidor, from Job. Lovely passing moves, 2 absolutely belting goals. Obviously, the second one, particularly in terms of the finish from Isidor. But I just thought right through the team, Sunderland look like a side who are playing at the absolute peak of their powers, full of confidence, willing to try things, but also really well organised, tactically astute, able to make little tweaks, which they did at the start of the second half when Oxford changed their formation to try and stem what had been happening in the first half. Just loads and loads of positives. But I think, I keep coming back to it. I think the main thing, that midfield 3, Job, Rigg and Dan Neil, I don't think there's a better midfield 3 in the Championship. And I don't think that they've, as a collective, been playing any better than they are right now in terms of just being full of confidence, full of running, full of energy, and just great to watch.
And the exciting thing with those 3 is, certainly for Job and Rigg, but also for Neil, he's only 22, that they're only going to get better and better.
Absolutely. And the thing with Dan Neil is, he is still to a degree coming to terms with this role as the kind of single pivot, the one that has to sit deep at times and let Job and Rigg spring on. So, he's still learning that a little bit, but I thought he played really well at the weekend. And then, Rigg and Bellingham, it's just massively exciting to think where they could get to, given their age and the standard they're playing at the minute. I mean, you hate to say it, but if you're not just Premier League scouts from right across Europe, I would say, the leading sides, if you're not having conversations about what are the chances of getting them out of Sunderland, then I think you're doing something wrong. Now, I absolutely would have hope and confidence that Sunderland will fight tooth and nail to keep them. But, let's be brutally honest, they're not going to be Championship players for very much longer. And if Sunderland can't get there, then we'll see what happens. But they are that good. There's no doubt about that.
I was going to say Sunderland aren't going to be a Championship team for much longer if they keep
playing. Yeah,
we know what Sunderland are capable of a team. We've seen that in the first few months of the season. But the challenge on Saturday, I think, was more so the mentality of following up such a bruising win against Luton and dealing with the expectation, because although Sunderland are top, there probably hasn't been loads of games so far where Sunderland have gone in as clear favourites to win. Hull had the look of a tough game. Luton obviously had the look of a tough game, and then they've had some tough leads, Middlesbrough, Burnley at home as well. This was one of those games that you look at and say, well, yes, Sunderland should win it comfortably. To do that says a lot for the mentality of the players, the young players, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think what was telling was that after the game, the Oxford manager, Des Buckingham, he basically just said, look, we've come up into this league and we've done really well. I'm really pleased with the way we've settled in. I'm really pleased with the players. That's the first time that I've looked at our team and almost felt like we didn't really belong on the same pitch as the team we were playing against. And I thought that was really telling, that he basically just said, look, we always knew as Oxford there was going to be an odd game this season where we came up against a team who were just better than us. And it says something that that's Sunderland, doesn't it? You know what I mean? So I thought that was really, telling, really, that you've got sides in this league now who are looking at Sunderland and coming up against Sunderland and just saying, well, they're one of the best sides in the league. There's nothing we can do about that. Now, as you say, the more that happens, the more that Sunderland stay at the top of the league, the more the pressure's going to mount, the more the expectation's going to mount, all of that. But yeah, how many times have we said that's another tick in the box for them so far this season? Well, Saturday was, because like you say, it was probably the first, routine home game for a while where they go into it and it's just, well, Sunderland should win this. And they did with no fuss really whatsoever.
I'd said to you the weekend, I had 5 Live on Saturday afternoon, and the guy who was, I can't think of his name, the guy who was covering the Sunderland game clearly hadn't seen an awful lot of Sunderland this season, but he's seen a lot of Championship football. He was saying how he does Championship week in, week out, and he said it was by far the best Championship display he'd seen from any side so far this season. We were talking last week about kind of expectations growing and all that sort of stuff. Well, the secret's out, isn't it? I know that sounds daft for a team that are 5 points clear at the top of the Championship, but it's very much out now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, to be fair, Oxford, I think they tried to be fairly solid and keep things tight, but Sunderland were just that clearly that much better, and they were able to move the ball and around and cause problems for Oxford right from the word go. Now, I do think the days of sides coming to the Stadium of Light and just playing their own game without any thought whatsoever for what Sunderland are doing, other than maybe, we've already seen Leeds there, we've already seen Burnley there, maybe when a Sheffield United come or a West Brom or someone who's right up there. But the vast majority of this team, the teams in this league now, for an away game at Sunderland, will be coming with a defensive plan to try and stop Sunderland playing. That's going to be one of the big challenges, I think, for Sunderland between now and the end of the season. But when you've got Rigg, when you've got Job, when you've got Isidor all playing in the form they are at the minute, well, good luck if you think you can just shut up shop and defend against them for 90 minutes, because on the evidence of the weekend, you're not going to be able to do it.
I mean, what about Isidor? He's if anyone beats him in the goal of the season competition for Sunderland, then they're going to have to score a belter. That was another beauty of the weekend after his Hull goal, which I loved. It was funny because we spoke to Aaron Conley after the open training session yesterday, and he kind of said, it's not lost on me that if I was here last year, I'd have been playing every minute because we didn't have any of the strikers, whereas now you've got Isidor. Mayenda was back training yesterday, which we'll get to. Abdullah High, there's no pressure whatsoever to rush him back, obviously, because Sunderland, I can't believe you're saying it, are so well stocked in attack all at once. And Isidor's made it his own, made that spot his own, hasn't he?
He's been a real find, hasn't he? He came in, and I think because, he came in with a better pedigree than most of the other forwards Sunderland have been signing in the last couple of years. I think that was fair. But with a real kind of feeling or an understanding that he was probably going to play as a winger. And could he do it as a number 9? There was the argument, well, this is classic Sunderland in a way. They've managed again to bring in a forward who's not really a number 9 and isn't going to work as a number 9. Well, clearly, that reading of the situation was completely wrong, wasn't it? He's been brilliant. He's been brilliant. Not just his goals, which, Sunderland have desperately needed a number 9 who can score goals. And in Isidor, they've got that now. But just the way that he's led the line as a proper number 9, wanting the ball, holding the ball up. There was one at the weekend when he got the ball kind of on the halfway line, did this little Cruyff turnstile flick to set one of the midfielders away. That was absolutely brilliant. And as an all-round number 9, he's been a massive find. And, it goes without saying what he's on loan, isn't he, from Zenit? The understanding is that there is some kind of a clause in there that should enable Sunderland to do something next summer. Well, that's looking more and more like a no-brainer, whatever happens, doesn't it? That you'd want to sign up Isidor because he's been absolutely excellent.
Yeah, when you're saying there about it's not just his goals at Luton last week, I was hugely impressed by him because that was the most bruising and brutal night for a lone centre forward against Luton's 3 centre halves. You know what you're going to get from him, don't you? Was feeding on scraps, really. He was going up and coming back, but he did everything he could to make it stick and make it work, and never let his chin drop.
And he's clearly loving it as well, because
he's a real character, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he got kind of battered and bruised a bit in the second half of the game at the weekend. He went down a couple of times, and in the end, he went off with, I don't know, about 10 minutes left or something like that. But then at the final whistle, he's leading the singing and the dancing in front of the South Stand, in front of the Roker end, with his ice strapped around his knee. You can imagine Sunderland's medical staff are thinking, God, will you just get into that blooming dressing room so we can give you a bit of a rub down and see exactly what's going on with his knock? But he was having absolutely none of it. He was the conductor in chief. And we spoke to Dan Neil after the game at the weekend, and we kind of mentioned Isidor, and he said, oh yeah, he's some character. Like he really is great fun. And you can see that he's clearly a big personality, and he's added an awful lot to this Sunderland team, both on and off the pitch.
Conley was saying the same yesterday. You mentioned there the ice pack on the knee. Well, Sunderland do have a couple of injury concerns ahead of the game against QPR this weekend. Mayenda was back in training yesterday, but Ballard and Patterson weren't involved. You're heading to Sunderland to speak to Régis Lebris on Thursday afternoon, so we'll get a more definitive idea then. But that's obviously a concern.
Yeah, it's a worry. I mean, Moore obviously came in for Patterson at the weekend, did his first league start. I think he maybe had literally one save. So he was fine. And Lebris kind of said after the game, sometimes you can see with keepers, even if they're not making saves, that they look like they belong there. They look confident. I've got no worries with him. I think that's all fine. But, QPR haven't been great and I have their own struggles. But going away from home, you would expect that he'll be busier at the weekend than he was at home to Oxford. So, if he is playing, and like I say, at the minute we don't know, but I suspect they're going to be cautious with Patterson. I don't think they're going to rush him back, because the last thing they need is him to be out long term. So, I think there's probably a decent chance Moore's still in the side at the weekend. I think if he is, we'll probably learn a little bit more about him. Ballard, yeah, but as we've said all the way through, Meffham's, just made Ballard not be missed any way, shape or form. And provided Isidor is okay, and the signs were that, it was a knock, it was dead leg, that kind of thing, he should be fine, then they can ease Mayenda back in as well. So there are players out. There are players that are starting to come back. But, while we have worried and probably continue to worry in certain areas about the depth within this Sunderland squad, they've managed perfectly fine thus far.
Just on the open training session yesterday.
Yeah, you were there yesterday, weren't you? How was it?
Well, kind of something like that is a reminder, I think, of just how much Sunderland have come on in the last 4 or 5 months. Imagine doing that in the middle of
the as the whole club.
Yeah, just imagine, and the mood around the club. Imagine doing that in the middle of April. The players would have been booed onto the pitch. And
they would have done.
Because of everything that was going on at the time.
Having said that, man, if they'd done it in April, that probably would have been the classic training game against 11 dummies and things to lose 1-0.
There was a class turnout. It's always hard to see, like, when you're in the stand, it's hard to see exactly how full
how many there are,
But it was a great turnout, great atmosphere, loads of kids there, obviously half term.
Yeah, which is fantastic. I mean, I know we say, and to be fair, more and more clubs are doing this now, and Sunderland were quite an early adopter of this, so fair play to them for that.
Yeah,
great thing to do, isn't it?
It is, and the injured players came out first and signed loads of autographs, and then afterwards, the players who've been involved in the session came over and signed loads. And Luke O'Nien got on the mic and said, I'm going to come round as many as possible. Well, he might still be there now.
Because,
there was no shortage of people wanting photos and autographs.
Yeah, I bet.
Nick Barnes was as in demand as any of the players.
Oh, I can well imagine that. I felt
like royalty when I was walking out with him at the end.
With Barnesy, signed pictures of his book, of his stat book.
But what was interesting was, and we don't watch Sunderland train day in, day out, so I'm not sure, but it certainly didn't look like an exhibition on the pitch. It looked like Lebris was still treating this as a
training session.
Understandably, 3 days before a game, 4 days before a game. And there was a suggestion afterwards that when I got in there, the music was on, and then the music was turned off, and the suggestion afterwards was Lebris had asked for the music to be turned off so the players could obviously hear
this
what
isn't
was
a
being
circus.
said.
There's a reason we're doing this.
Exactly. So although great PR exercise, brilliant for the fans, great for us all, isn't it, to get a peek behind the curtain and see what's going on. There was clearly it was still a serious session. And just finally on it, we spoke to Conley afterwards.
Yeah.
And the first story from him was on We Are Sunderland last night. He was great, really, really honest, as you'd expect after that revealing interview he did with the club a couple of weeks ago. But he said how he already knows he wants to earn a longer-term contract at Sunderland. He said what he wants is security now. He's bounced around clubs and cities and houses and homes for the last couple of years. He wants security. That helps him on the pitch if he's got security. He's clearly desperate to earn a longer term stay. But he says, like, first I've got to get on the pitch, which is like no easy thing at the minute. But really good, really honest, and it's refreshing, isn't it, to hear a footballer talk just so openly.
Yeah. And he'll get his chance, won't he? I mean, we've talked about Isidor and everything, and Isidor's been great, and you're right. Had Conley been here in the second half of last season, he would have been playing every minute of every game pretty much. But he'll get his chance. There'll be injuries, there'll be knocks, there'll be suspensions, there'll be all of that. He'll get his chance. It's not like Sunderland, yes, the striker situation is looking infinitely better than it was, but it's not like he's behind 10 other forwards wrestling. But he'll get a chance,
and he knows that because there wasn't obviously he'd want to start every week, but there wasn't any element of frustration, and he made the point last year at Hull. I played every game in the first half of the season, scored however many goals. The second half of the season, I didn't kick a ball. Now, obviously, there was stuff going on there, and that's why, or that was a major contributing factor. But he said it's a long season. We're going to need the squad, so he knows he'll get a chance and he'll get a run.
And you say about the injured
really
players, who was there kind of training, who wasn't training from the kind
of
Mayenda
trained, looked like it was kind of full training, really.
Right.
Lebris, just from kind of what we can judge, Lebris might say that wasn't the case, but that looked to be the case.
And he hasn't been out for a long period, has he?
No.
So you would think that understandably, Lebris has used kind of the under-21s a little bit to ease some players back in and stuff like that. Well, Mayenda will just go straight back into the squad when he's ready, won't he? Because he's only been out a few weeks.
Yeah, Isidor trained, you mentioned. I mean, seeing an ice pack on a knee is commonplace when you're interviewing or speaking to a footballer afterwards, isn't it? So no worries there. Meffam trained, but Patterson and Ballard didn't.
Right, okay.
But they were there. They were like involved. They were speaking to fans. They were getting for, but no, they didn't train. So I think that's going to be the interesting one on Thursday when you speak to Lebris. What about QPR then? Just to wrap up, Cifuentes was on the list for someone he was talked about, and what a great job he did last season. I thought the job he did went slightly under the radar because Danny Rolls worked at Sheffield Wednesday, but it was probably equally as impressive when you consider how bad QPR were at the start of the season. They've had a rough old start. They haven't won since the end of August. Good point against Burnley last weekend, which was a good result for Sunderland as well. But clearly he's not there, and he hasn't kicked on as he'd have hoped.
No, and it's pretty similar to Roll and Sheffield Wednesday, isn't it, really? That, like you say, both of those managers did superb things in the second half of last season, got their teams safe. And I was looking at both of them in the summer and thinking there's a good chance both of those sides kick on a bit this year because, rated Cifuentes and the job he'd done, rated Roll on the job he'd done. As you said, there was definitely talk around both of them and Sunderland at various stages of the summer. But it hasn't really happened for Roll at Sheffield Wednesday, and it definitely hasn't happened for Cifuentes at QPR so far this season. They're back in their kind of position that they've been in for the last few years and bang up against it in a relegation fight. So, great opportunity for Sunderland. The championship's the championship, no easy games, blah, blah, all of that, fine. But it's a big opportunity to get another away win. I really do think. I see no reason why Sunderland can't go down there and win. They'll be going there full of confidence, ready to play their football. I think Cifuentes and QPR will allow them to play their football. I think that's one thing. We kind of saw the second half of last season that Cifuentes wants QPR to play, and the side and the squad that he's assembled there, really, they can't do an awful lot other than that, really. So I think Sunderland will get an opportunity to play their football, and you back them to come out on top, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And they'll go there just with such confidence and such belief. But what we saw at Luton was, if QPR don't let them play the football, well, Sunderland will dig it out.
In other ways,
dig it out another way. And you've got now that run of 3 games before the next international break. QPR, Preston, Coventry. Preston have improved. I know they blew it at Plymouth last week, but Preston have improved since Heckingbottom went in there, hasn't they? Coventry got a big win over Luton last week.
Yeah, it was a massive win for them.
It doesn't look the most daunting spell trio.
No, that's it. I mean, we keep coming back to the Championship can do strange things, but you look at that and you think, okay, the away games are by no means the toughest away games you're going to encounter this season. Coventry at home, yes, Coventry have looked a little bit better in the last month or so, but that's tended to be in their home games. They're still not great on the road. And Sunderland are 5 points clear. I mean, I know it's very early. Yeah, I take that. But I mean, God, imagine if we got to a point where they were 8 points clear. 8 points clear, you know what I mean?
Well, I'm just looking here. I have to dig it out my emails. I should have seen it beforehand, but I got an email. You often get it from the bookmakers, don't you?
Yeah.
But I got one on Monday morning. Where is it? 2 ticks. For the first time this season, Sunderland are now odds on to be promoted from the Championship, meaning bookmakers are projecting over a 50% probability of promotion. Since the start of October, Sunderland has also been the most popular Championship promotion bet on Odds Checker, capturing 16% of the total bet share. I mean, it's no surprise, is it?
No, it doesn't surprise us because obviously, they were pretty much any price at the start of the season, and the odds have been contracting. But it's when does it get to the point that you say, well, no, this team is the real deal, and it kind of that brings us right back to where we started this vid. That in some ways, that performance and that kind of just completely trouble-free home win at the weekend, that smacks of being the real deal. And as I say, the Oxford boss said as much in the immediate aftermath of the game. So, it doesn't surprise us. And like I say, 5 points clear. If Sunderland win at the weekend, then everybody else has got to win around them for that to stay at 5.
And will they win at the weekend?
I think they will, yeah. I think they will.
2-1. Or maybe even 2-0.
I'll go
2-0.
I'll go 3-1, Sunderland.
The favourites got the favourites
3-1. I haven't had many come in, actually. There hasn't been many 3-1s so far this year. We're due a run of little 3-1s to get some bets up.
As long as it's a win, that'll do.
Yeah, I'll go 3-1 Sunderland.
Brilliant. 6 points then, or 2 wins we've predicted. In fact, didn't I say I overweighted 23 minutes? Didn't I call 2-0? Didn't I call 2-0 and a Bellingham first goal last week?
I think you might have done, I think you might have done. I'm pretty sure I went 1-0 Bellingham.
Yeah. Oh, did you go 1-0 Bellingham? Maybe I didn't.
I definitely went 1-0 because I thought it would be tight, and I went for Bellingham, but it was I'd said like 78 minutes or something. Like you're gonna have to wait, and obviously it was very early. But you did go 2-0.
I went 2-0. Yeah, I'm thinking, did I say Bellingham first goal? I'll watch back after this. Well, thank you for watching this one. Anyway, as I said at the start, do subscribe if you haven't already. And as you can see rolling across the bottom there, you can subscribe to We Are Sunderland for just £1 for 6 months or £12 for the full year. We'll have plenty of build-up on the site ahead of Saturday's trip to QPR. Labrise is holding his press conference on Thursday afternoon, and then all the analysis from Loftus Road afterwards. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Enjoy your travels if you're heading down there this week, and take care and enjoy the rest of your week.